Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling what is literally the ultimate mystery of human existence. I mean it. We're looking at the massive tension between the physical, biological meat of our brains and that deep, undeniable personal sense of free will we all have. So, are we the actual authors of our own destiny, or are we just really complex biological machines? Okay, let's dive into this because honestly, it gets kind of uncomfortable really fast. Neuroscience essentially operates on this central dogma. Every single part of our mental lives, our thoughts, our feelings, our continuous sense of who we are, is inextricably linked to the physical biology of our brains. So this isn't just some dusty philosophical debate, it's intensely personal. If your neurons ultimately control your actions, are you actually truly free? To really see how high the stakes are here, let's look at the tragic true crime story of Charles Whitman, the infamous 1960s Texas sniper. Now, days before his horrific shooting spree at the University of Texas, he actually went to a doctor, literally begging for help with these overwhelming, violent impulses. The night before, he documented his mental turmoil in his diary. Then, he committed his terrible crimes the very next day. And after his death, well, his autopsy revealed a massive tumor pressing directly on his amygdala and his hypothalamus. Those are the exact emotion and behavior regulation centers of the brain.
But what's truly haunting is this direct quote from Whitman's own diary. He literally wrote, "After my death, I wish that an autopsy would be performed to see if there is any visible physical disorder." He knew his control was slipping away. He felt this intense internal war. And this poses our central threat. If a biological tumor caused his actions, literally pushing him over the edge, well, what does that mean for the rest of us? Are our daily actions just the result of a slightly more normal biological program? Do any of us possess actual free will? Or, are we simply just meat machines?
Part 1. The Investigation, 3 Flawed Solutions.
So our first false lead is bottom-up determinism. Basically, this is the theory that absolutely everything reduces down to the fundamental laws of physics. In this view, human psychology? It's just an illusion painted over a bunch of atomic interactions. But there are some major problems with this. First off, physics equations are, well, they're what we might call impoverished. A quantum wave equation knows absolutely nothing about human hunger or curiosity or why you decided to watch this explainer today. And practically speaking, this philosophy completely falls apart in real life. When a waiter asks what you want for dinner, you don't just sit there waiting for your nervous system to automatically calculate a response. You have to actively choose.
Okay, our second false lead is the quantum brain. Some people will say, aha, quantum mechanics involves randomness, so boom, that leaves room for free will. But there's a pretty big catch here. Randomness is definitely not freedom. Think about it. If you're crossing a busy street, you absolutely do not want your visual perception relying on some random quantum coin flip to decide if a car is coming. Random, uncharacteristic behavior isn't freedom. It's just terrifying, deadly chaos. If your actions are just the result of microscopic dice rolls happening in your brain, that's really not you being in control either. So the crucial point is this. We often fall into this trap of thinking true freedom means an uncaused action, something completely independent of any biological or physical history. But actually, scratch that. That's our third false lead. True freedom isn't an action without a cause. It's an action caused by the right things. We call this self-determination. It means your actions are caused by your own memories, your beliefs, your values, and your personal history. And at the end of the day, that is what we genuinely mean when we say we want to be free. Part 2. The breakthrough. The power of the whole. Consider this brilliant, really simple comparison. A pile of airplane parts just scattered on the ground absolutely cannot fly. But if you take those exact same parts and assemble them in a specific, highly structured organization, suddenly they can fly you all the way from London to New York. This introduces a totally vital concept in science known as emergent properties. It's the idea that the whole is literally greater than the sum of its parts. By virtue of their specific organization, the whole system suddenly gains entirely new causal powers that the individual pieces completely lack on their own. Let's push this concept even further. I want you to ask yourself, where does Microsoft Word actually live? Seriously, if you think about it, it's a fascinating puzzle. Where does that specific software information actually exist out there in the physical world?
Well, the answer is pretty fascinating. Microsoft Word runs on physical transistors inside your computer. But if you restart the program, or say you run it on a completely different laptop, it uses a totally different set of physical transistors. Yet, the pattern, the software itself, remains totally identical. It's the organized pattern that is doing the actual work. It's kind of like a song, right? Take the Star-Spangled Banner. You can play it on a piano, a violin, or sing it in a totally different key. The physical notes change, but that higher-level pattern stays exactly the same. In complex systems, this high-level organization has absolute, real, causal power in the physical world. And that's completely independent of the specific hardware, or, in our case, the specific neurons firing in your brain at any exact second.
Part 3. The evidence. Top-down versus bottom-up causality. Let's contrast the views of two brilliant Oxford scientists who are looking at the exact same biology. Over on the left, we have evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, who represents the ultimate bottom-up view. He writes that genes swarm inside us, essentially manipulating us by remote control. So in his view, the genes are the masters. But then, on the right, you have physiologist Dennis Noble taking the top-down view. He argues that genes are trapped inside us, that we are the intelligent system reading their code. These are two completely different lenses for viewing humanity. So where does the power really lie? Is it at the bottom with the atoms and the genes, or is it at the top with the whole human?
And this brilliantly illustrates the answer. It's actually both. Just look at how we successfully treat acute depression today. On one hand, we use SSRI medications. Now that is a purely bottom-up intervention, drugs altering serotonin neurotransmitters down at a chemical level. But on the other hand, we use cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And that is a purely top-down intervention. You have a therapist literally helping a patient restructure their high-level human beliefs and values. And guess what? The clinical data proves for sure that both treatments work, and they work incredibly well together. This is absolutely profound. It proves that changing your abstract, high-level beliefs literally rewires the physical biology of your brain. Your beliefs have genuine, real-world causal power.
Part 4. The plot twist. The hungry judge effect.
So we've established that our minds have real top-down power. We aren't just helpless meat machines. But just as we're feeling all fully empowered by our self-determination, we have to navigate a massive plot twist. Consider one of the most shocking pieces of social psychology data ever published. There's this cynical old saying in legal circles that goes, "Justice is what the judge ate for breakfast." Well, a legendary study out of Tel Aviv University decided to rigorously test this. They tracked these highly experienced Israeli parole judges who spent all day hearing cases. These judges were making incredibly heavy, rational, high-level decisions about whether prisoners deserved parole. And throughout their grueling workday, the judges only had 2 scheduled food breaks. The sheer scale of this effect is honestly staggering. First thing in the morning, the judges granted parole at a rate of 65%. But as the morning wore on and they started getting hungry, that approval rate absolutely plummeted down to nearly zero, around 10%, just right before their first food break. But then, after they ate and rested, it shot right back up to 60%. And researchers rigorously controlled for the severity of the crime, the time served, the whole shebang. The only variable that explained this massive swing was hunger. It proves that despite our incredible top-down free will, our bottom-up biology still exerts a massive, hidden control over us.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. Our beliefs absolutely shape our biology, but our biology relentlessly shapes our beliefs. It's like this delicate, beautiful, and sometimes, frankly, terrifying tension between our biological machinery and our conscious self-determination. So I'll leave you with this question to ponder. If even our highest, most rational, professional judgments can be completely swayed by the need for a sandwich, how fragile is human justice? And really, how secure is your own freedom? Thanks for joining me to explore this fascinating topic.